Hello out there, everybody. We have got another great show for you today on Hollywood Live. We talk about history and Black history and how it has been erased. Well, this is a story that was almost erased in history, but not now. My guest today is director Nailah Jefferson. She has done an incredible job on a documentary about Danielle Luna. Yes, Danielle Luna was America's first African American supermodel. Why don't we know her? Welcome, Nailah. And you've done an
Thank you so much.
incredible job here. How was this story almost lost like this?
Well, thank you for having me. How was this story lost? I think we all, after people hear it and we see what she accomplished, we asked ourselves that question because at one time she was the highest paid model in the industry. She used to hang out with John Legend. I mean, John Legend,
John Lennon.
Lennon, the Rolling Stones. Andy Warhol, everybody who was really anybody during that time. So yes,
Right.
how was she lost? And I think when you get into her story and the obstacles that were set up against her, then you kind of understand why we lost the story because we can't know who Danielle Luna was unless we know what happened to her. And if we learn what happened to her, then we start to get into how different power players actually just ceased her career, and we're not allowing her to reach the potential that she could have reached. I mean, within the first 2 years of modeling, she was on the cover of Harper's Bazaar, first Black woman to do that. She was on the cover of British Vogue, first Black person ever on a Vogue cover. And so you could just see how high her star was ascending. But as many people have said, she was ahead of her time.
Yeah.
And so what looked to be undeniable because she was on such a course for success was ultimately stopped because of her race.
It's just phenomenal. I mean, I'm looking at when I watched the documentary and saw some of the photos, I was thinking, okay, I think when I was a little girl, I saw some of these photos somewhere.
Yeah.
Because being from Michigan and all my family lived in Detroit, where Danielle Luna was originally from, I'm like, and she probably went to school with my cousins. And I'm like, everybody was fabulous in Detroit in those days. We're talking about the 60s and the
Mm,
beginning of the Motown era.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I've seen this woman somewhere, but had no idea who she was. What a story. I mean, she was photographed by Richard Avedon, who was like
Yeah.
all of these people, like you said, hanging out with Andy Warhol. It was very interesting because the documentary is done in parts. So it's kind of starts in Detroit, then she goes to New York, and then she goes to Europe, where she
Yeah.
finally achieves fame, but they were able to stop her even there.
Oh,
And it
yes.
says a lot about, coming up during the civil rights era and where we are. But let's talk about her style, because the first thing I noticed were her fingernails. And these were like photos from the early 60s.
I mean, for me, that was one of the most fun parts because she was so stylish. Like her style, I feel like today would
Yeah.
still resonate. And even those photos that you've seen, I think a lot of people have referenced her photos. Like, so maybe you and I didn't know who she was because we weren't in the fashion industry, but fashion people knew, and fashion people would pull her references all the time. So they may have not given her the credit, but they knew that she was on to something. And yes, you see those nails were impeccable, that cut crease, the winged. I mean, Danielle Luna was, yes, absolutely fabulous. So that's one part of this film that we were able to really bring to life through her pictures. And that's the other thing too. The photos that she took from about 68 to 79, the end of her life, all of that she pretty much art directed. So
Mm.
it was her and her husband Luigi Casaniga, who is a photographer, but he tells you when I met her, I wasn't nearly as good as I was. Like Danielle really pushed me to put my intention into the film, and we took photographs like every day.
Wow. And that is, of course, her daughter's father as
Yeah.
well. And she's very much a part of this interview. We were hoping she could join today, but I know you ladies have been on the road traveling, promoting this HBO documentary, which, by the way, airs when?
It airs next Wednesday, September 13th.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. We're right on time then.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll get this out there before then. Um, What a story. I mean, her daughter, and I don't want to give away the ending, but it's a teary, you need a couple of handkerchiefs for this story at some point. She unfortunately died when her daughter was only 18 months old. And so you and her daughter, Dream, tell the story through photos and letters that Donyale left for her daughter, Dream. Very
Well, yeah, and they're journal entries, and then some of them are other writings that she had. But that's the thing. I mean, Danielle Luna, I think she knew. I think she knew somebody's going to come across this story one day, and I'm going to be, as she was very intentional about in her life, I'm going to be the narrator of my own film. And because she left us with these materials, maybe it took 40 years since her death, but she very much is in the driver's seat of telling the story of her life, which I think is appropriate because that's all she ever wanted. I think this is a woman who longed for freedom, who longed to be outside of the box that society creates for us. And so I'm very just honored that Dream allowed us to look through these personal papers, look through journals, and bring her mother to life in that way. And you're right, it is very emotional. For a lot of the friends and family that we interviewed in this film, they never got a chance to tell Donyale goodbye. And so this is their opportunity to do that.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about her death.
Mhm.
Well, they claim she allegedly died from a drug overdose.
Mhm.
But there seems to be a lot of question about that. And people are like, but she didn't really use drugs. So is there a bit of still suspicion about that and what really happened to her?
Well, I think the reality is that she did die of a drug overdose. That is the truth. But what we also wanted to get to into the film is also looking into the why. And I think when you go back and you read some things about Danielle, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about her. So that's one thing we wanted to clear up. But not only that, I think because she just approached life in such a different way than anybody else around her. She was often misunderstood. And so we wanted to go deeper and beyond just the what she was. We wanted to go into the why. And so that's why we wanted to learn about her childhood. Okay, what encouraged her to make this persona? Okay, what led to her to leave the United States? Okay, what even maybe led to the drug use?
Mhm. Exactly. So
Yeah.
there is no question because I was like, okay, are they trying to say that? Oh, maybe this didn't.
There's no question, but we wanted to let people say what they needed to say in that moment. I feel like this film was also a healing journey for Dream and a lot of the friends, like I said, who did not get to tell her goodbye. And you can see some of them are still in denial about her death. Others are saying that it was an accident because I think some people might allege that it's not. And
Mhm.
so it's just everybody. We wanted to allow everybody to process it. And that's one thing I'm actually really proud of in this film. I don't think anywhere within it we try to tell you how to think or how to take her or anything like that. We don't try to explain away her behavior or anything like that. We just present you with the information and try to go as in depth as we can. And then everybody can walk away and take from it what they will.
How is it that you got HBO to pick this up? Because that's a big deal too.
It is a big deal. Oh gosh. I mean, I don't know why they said yes. I'm just happy they did. But I think at the time, we did pitch this film in the fall of 2020. That was not long after the death of George Floyd. And I think there was more of an interest. I'm not saying that there isn't one today by HBO, but I
Mhm.
do think people were a bit more intentional about telling Black stories, and especially
Mhm.
Black stories that had not been told. So
Mhm.
I'm very thankful that they took this chance on this story, because the other thing that I think we're seeing now is there's an influx of celebrity documentaries, but they're known celebrities, right? Danielle is an unknown. So there's even a chance, a risk taking a chance on telling that story because you just don't know if people are going to tune in. But
Mhm.
I think people are. I think people are curious. They still want to. They still want to learn things. They still want to uncover things. There's that reveal. And when it's somebody like Danielle Luna, who's so mysterious and so fascinating, as you said
Mhm.
earlier, you just lean into it.
Yeah, you really, really do. Um, Looking at fashion today and looking at Zendaya, who who has done a fashion spread seemingly with the same clothes that Danielle Luna had on at one point. And there's a lot of similarity there because she's also very tall and those long, long, long legs. Um, she's not the only one, though. How would you say that Danielle Luna's style, just her style and her sense of fashion, has changed the world that we live in?
Well, I think at the time when Danielle was with us, um, she just was unapologetically fabulous, right? I think maybe there at that time in our community there was, and I don't want to speak for the fabulous women of Motown and things like that, because I think, you know, that's different. But I do think maybe uh, there was more of a thinking that you had to be toned down, and that you couldn't kind of live out loud, but she always did. And so her clothes were always different. Her husband told me that she would be vintage shopping in the 60s and 70s. So then you're thinking, okay, vintage. And then she had clothes from the 50s and 40s that she was making look, you know, completely stylish. So all of that, I think, so the biggest thing is that she had her own personal style, which I think for anybody, when you can just put your stamp on a look, I think that's just the ultimate, right? That's the ultimate when you can just flip something and make it your own.
Mhm.
And that's a timeless quality that Danielle Luna had.
Yeah, she really, really did. You know, when we look at things today, are seeming is as fast as forward as we've gone, we're kind of stepping back again. And you know, I'm looking at where we are in history within America, how divided we really are right
Mhm.
now. But there's certain things that always kind of bring people together, and it's always been black fashion, black music, black fashion, you know. And you look at all the big houses today, Louis Vuitton. Who do
Mhm.
they have? They have all of these black celebrities, as you said,
Mhm.
kind
Mhm.
of doing this. Um, do you think we are moving forward in that arena still, or are we standing at a kind of a precipice where we're not sure where we're going?
You know, it's interesting. I was literally just listening to the radio, and they were talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how, you know, in 2020, a lot of companies made pledges, and 3 years later, where are we today? Um, I unfortunately, and I don't think that people are following through with the promises that they made back in 2020. And I think that's what we were all afraid of. Is this a movement or is it a moment?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it seems like a moment, and I feel like, and that's in every arena. You see small changes here and there, but I mean, there's still so much work to be done. And so when I think about Black people in fashion, there's so few of us.
Mhm.
There's so few of them, I should say. I can't say that I'm in fashion, but there's so few of them. But and we don't get the chance to, I think we always have to be exceptional from the start and continue on a certain level. We don't get a chance to make mistakes. We don't get a chance to fall up like a lot of our white counterparts do. So it's hard to sustain even that
Mhm.
success. Um, so I mean, I'm hopeful that we can continue to push forward and we tell stories like this and get people to thinking again and saying, okay, well, this is a subject that we need to make sure that we keep our eye on so there's progress. But there's so much work, constantly, that needs to be done.
What do you want the viewer to come away with after watching this?
After watching this, I want them to come away with knowing who Danielle was. Like when we started this interview, you talked about erasure, and that's huge. Black people are often erased. Our accomplishments are often erased from the history books, especially Black people who, like Danielle, are complicated and not perfect. That's one thing that we talk about in the film. Um, Danielle was around during the civil rights era. She wasn't necessarily participating in the protests, but that does not mean that she was not the first Black woman on the cover of Harper's Bazaar. That does not mean that she was not the first Black woman on the cover of Vogue. She was a pioneer, and that can never be taken away from her. And her
Mm.
story deserves to be told because of the accomplishments that she made when she was here with us. So I hope that we really lean into celebrating people who achieve things that were at one time unachievable, unattainable. I hope that's what we lean into. And then also look at her as a total person, in her successes, in her failures, in her shortcomings, and all the ways that she was beautiful and fabulous, and just have a renewed appreciation for Danielle Luna, and kind of uplift her in a way that she couldn't be when she was here with us.
Yeah. Well, I've got to say, you've done a wonderful job, Nailah. What's up coming up for you, Miss Director?
Thank you. There's actually a film that I've been working on. It's commuted. It will be released in November 2023. So I have a busy fall. And it's about a woman, Danielle Metz, who in 1992 was sentenced to triple life plus 20 years for drug sentences. I'm sorry, for drug crimes associated with her then husband. And in 2016, she was actually granted clemency by President Obama through the Clemency Initiative. And one of the main goals of that was to correct all the over sentencing that was done during the war on drugs. And so Danielle has been home since 2016, and it's really been a thrill to see her evolution, as a mother, as a woman, as now an advocate for other women that she left behind in prison. So that'll be out later this year.
Oh, well, so we'll have to have you back on Hollywood Live then.
Yes, I would love to. I would love, and like Danielle can be with me.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. We'll get you back for that.
Oh,
Congratulations on this. It is a wonderful, wonderful story. Well told, beautifully done. And I know that you've got big things coming up for you as a career in directing. So
thank you so much. Thank you
congratulations.
so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. And for everyone else out there, you have got to see this. It's HBO. Danielle Luna story, and check it out. And by the way, while you're doing it, be good to yourself and somebody else. We'll see you next time.